The dust was so thick in her lungs that Sara Harper could barely remember what clean air tasted like. And when her knees finally buckled beneath her, the only thought that crossed her mind was how merciful it would be if she never got up again. The well stood before her like a monument to everything she could not reach. Her vision blurred at the edges, the New Mexico sun beating down on her shoulders with relentless fury. It was August of 1882, and Sara had been walking for 3 days straight with nothing but a half-empty canteen that had run dry that morning. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her dress torn at the hem and covered in dust that had once been red clay but now looked like dried blood. She had left Silver City in shame, her world crumbling around her after her father's debts had come due. The men who came to collect had been cruel but not cruel enough to kill her. Instead, they took everything, including her father's body after he put a bullet in his own head rather than face what was coming. They burned the small house to the ground and told her to disappear. So she walked. She walked because there was nothing else to do and nowhere else to go. The well was on the outskirts of what looked like a settlement, though Sara could barely make out the details through her failing vision. Her hands scraped against the stone as she tried to pull herself up to the bucket, but her arms had no strength left. She collapsed against the base of the well, her cheek pressed against sun-warmed stone, and waited for the end to come. She did not hear the footsteps approaching. She did not hear the startled curse or the sound of boots hitting the ground as someone dismounted quickly. What she did hear, as if from very far away, was a man's voice, rough and urgent. "Madam? Madam, can you hear me?" Strong hands turned her over gently, and Sara forced her eyes open. The face above her was shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see concern etched into weathered features, a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble, and eyes that were a startling shade of blue. "Water," she managed to croak, the single word scraping her throat raw. "I've got you," the man said, and Sara felt herself being lifted as easily as if she weighed nothing. He propped her against the well, one arm supporting her back, and then she heard the blessed sound of the bucket being lowered into the depths. The creak of the rope, the distant splash, and then the bucket was being hauled back up. He had a tin cup in his hand and he dipped it into the bucket before bringing it to her lips. "Slow," he instructed. "Just a little at first." The water was cool and sweet, and Sara wanted to gulp it down, but the man controlled the cup, giving her only small sips. After a moment, he pulled it away despite her weak protest. "Too much at once will make you sick," he explained. "Give it a minute." Sara focused on his face properly for the first time. He was perhaps in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting into harsh light. There was a gentleness to him despite his rough appearance, evident in the careful way he held her and the concern in his expression. "What is your name?" he asked. "Sara," she whispered. "Sara Harper." "Lucas Cooper," he replied. "What in God's name are you doing out here alone?" The question was too complicated to answer, and Sara felt tears burning behind her eyes. She had not cried when they took everything. She had not cried when she buried her father in an unmarked grave because she could not afford a proper funeral. But something about this stranger's kindness broke through the shell she had built around herself. "I have nowhere to go," she said simply. Lucas studied her for a long moment, then offered her more water. This time he let her drink a bit more, and Sara felt the life slowly seeping back into her body. When the cup was empty, he filled it again and drank himself, watching her over the rim. "You look like you have not eaten in days," he observed. "I have not." He nodded as if this confirmed something he already suspected. "Can you stand?" "I do not know." "Let us find out." Lucas stood and offered his hand. Sara took it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip as he pulled her to her feet. The world spun dangerously, and she would have fallen if he had not caught her, his arm going around her waist. "Easy now," he murmured. "I have got you." They stood there for a moment, Sara leaning heavily against this stranger, breathing in the scent of leather and horse and clean sweat. She should have been embarrassed, but she was too tired and too grateful to care. "My horse is just there," Lucas said, gesturing with his chin. Sara saw a beautiful chestnut mare tied to a post a few yards away. "Think you can make it that far?" "Yes." It took longer than it should have, Sara's legs trembling with every step, but Lucas was patient. When they reached the horse, he untied a bedroll from behind the saddle and spread it on the ground in the shade of a scraggly cottonwood tree. "Sit," he instructed, and Sara did, grateful to be off her feet. Lucas rummaged through his saddlebags and produced a cloth-wrapped package. Inside was dried beef and hard biscuits. He broke off a small piece of the beef and handed it to her. "Slow," he reminded her again. "Your stomach is going to be tender." Sara took the food and ate carefully, each bite a small miracle. Lucas sat nearby, his long legs stretched out in front of him, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "How far have you walked?" he asked. 3 days from Silver City." His eyebrows rose. "That is nearly 60 miles. I did not have a choice." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "The Harper family from Silver City. Your father was Silas Harper." It was not a question, and Sara felt her stomach clench. "You knew him." "I knew of him. Heard he got into some trouble with the wrong people." Lucas's voice was carefully neutral. "Heard he died." "He killed himself," Sara said flatly. She was tired of euphemisms, tired of dancing around the truth. "He owed money to some men who were not patient about collecting. They took everything we had and it still was not enough. So he shot himself and they told me to leave town. And you have been walking ever since." "Yes." Lucas shook his head slowly. "Where were you headed?" "Anywhere but there." Sara took another small bite of the dried beef, chewing slowly. "I thought perhaps I could make it to Oro Grande. I heard they might be hiring at one of the hotels or boarding houses." "Oro Grande is where I live," Lucas said. "It is still another 15 miles east of here." Sara felt something that might have been hope flutter in her chest, but she quickly crushed it down. Hope was dangerous. "I will make it eventually." "Not on foot in your condition, you will not." Lucas stood and brushed dust from his trousers. "The sun will be setting in a few hours. There is a ranch about 5 miles from here where I work. The owner is a decent man. He might have worked for you." "I do not know anything about ranch work." "The owner's wife might need help in the house. She has been looking for someone since their last girl got married and moved to Santa Fe." Sara looked up at him, squinting against the light. "Why are you helping me?" Lucas was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. 5 years ago I was in a bad way myself. Someone helped me when they did not have to. Maybe I am just passing that along." He did not elaborate, and Sara did not press. Instead, she finished the small amount of food he had given her and drank more water. Already she could feel her strength returning, though she was still desperately weak. "Can you ride?" Lucas asked. "I have before, but not recently." "Good enough." He offered his hand again and pulled her to her feet. "We will ride together. My horse can handle both of us for 5 miles. Sara felt a flush of embarrassment. "I could not impose." "You are not imposing. I am offering." His tone left no room for argument. "Besides, if I leave you here and you die, I will feel terrible about it. So you are really doing me a favor." Despite everything, Sara felt the corner of her mouth twitch. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. Lucas noticed, and something warm flickered in his eyes. He mounted the horse first, then reached down for Sara. She placed her foot in the stirrup and his hand clasped hers, pulling her up behind him. It was awkward and ungraceful, and she nearly slid right off the other side, but Lucas steadied her. "Hold on," he said, and Sara wrapped her arms around his waist, her cheek pressed against his back. They rode in silence as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the New Mexico landscape in shades of orange and gold. Sara kept her eyes closed much of the time, exhausted beyond measure, letting the steady gait of the horse and the warmth of the man in front of her lull her into a kind of waking dream. She thought about her father, about the good years before the gambling and the drinking. She thought about her mother, who had died of fever when Sara was just 14. She thought about the small house in Silver City that was now nothing but ash and memory. And she thought about the fact that she was 18 years old and completely alone in the world. Lucas seemed to sense when her grip loosened, her exhaustion overtaking her. "Stay awake," he said gently. "We are almost there." Sara forced her eyes open and saw buildings in the distance, the main ranch house and several outbuildings forming a small compound. There were corrals with horses, a barn that looked sturdy and well-maintained, and smoke rising from the chimney of the house. As they drew closer, a man emerged from the barn, shading his eyes against the setting sun. He was older, perhaps in his 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair. "Lucas," the man called, "did not expect you back until tomorrow." "Ran into a situation, Tom," Lucas replied, reining the horse to a stop near the porch. "This is Sara Harper. She was in trouble and she needs help." Tom's expression shifted from curiosity to concern as he took in Sara's appearance. "Lord above, girl. What happened to you?" Lucas dismounted and reached up to help Sara down. Her legs nearly gave out when her feet touched the ground, and both men moved to steady her. "Let us get her inside," Tom said. "Martha will want to see to her." They half-carried Sara up the porch steps and through the front door. The interior of the house was blessedly cool and neat, with simple furniture and woven rugs on the wooden floor. A woman appeared from what looked like the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Tom, what in the world?" She was round-faced and kind-looking, with gray hair pulled back in a bun. "This is Sara Harper," Tom explained. "She needs help." Martha took one look at Sara and immediately sprang into action. "Bring her to the guest room. Tom, get some more water from the well. Lucas, you stay and help me." They brought Sara to a small bedroom at the back of the house. Martha pulled back the quilts on the bed and helped Sara sit down. Her gentle hands examined Sara's face, tilting it this way and that in the lamplight. "You are sunburned badly," Martha observed, "and half-starved by the look of you. How long have you been traveling?" 3 days on foot," Sara said. "From Silver City." Martha's eyes widened. "Alone?" "Yes, madam." The older woman shook her head but asked no more questions. Tom returned with water, and Martha poured some into a basin, adding herbs from a jar on the dresser. She soaked a cloth in the mixture and began to gently clean Sara's face. "This will help with the sunburn," she said. "Lucas, go ask Tom if we have any of that salve left from last summer." Lucas nodded and left the room. Martha continued her ministrations, her touch soft and motherly. Sara felt tears threatening again and blinked them back. "You are safe here," Martha said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Whatever you are running from, it cannot touch you on this ranch." "I am not running from anything," Sara said. "I have nothing to run from. Everything is already gone." Martha met her eyes. "Then perhaps you are running toward something new." Lucas returned with a small tin of salve, and Martha applied it to Sara's sunburned skin. The cool relief was immediate, and Sara sighed. "You need rest," Martha announced. "And food, but that can wait a bit. You should sleep first." "I do not want to be a burden," Sara protested weakly. "Nonsense. We have plenty of room and plenty of food." Martha glanced at Lucas. "Tell Tom we will have a guest for a while." "Yes, madam," Lucas said, his eyes meeting Sarah's for a brief moment before he left the room. Martha helped Sara out of her ruined dress, clucking her tongue at the state of it. She produced a clean nightgown from a trunk and helped Sara into it, then tucked her into the bed as if she were a child. "Sleep now," Martha said, smoothing the hair back from Sara's forehead. "Everything will look better in the morning." But Sara caught her hand before she could leave. "Why are you being so kind to me? You do not even know me," Martha smiled. "Because someone else might have needed the same kindness once, and I hope someone gave it to them. Now sleep." She left the room, closing the door softly behind her. Sara lay in the comfortable bed, clean and safe for the first time in days, and finally allowed herself to cry. She cried for her father, for herself, for everything she had lost and everything she would never have. She cried until exhaustion claimed her, and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When Sara woke, sunlight was streaming through the window, and she had no idea what time it was. Her body ached in places she had not known could ache, and her sunburned skin felt tight and tender. But she was alive, and she was clean, and there was the smell of coffee and bacon wafting through the house. She sat up slowly, taking stock of her surroundings in the daylight. The room was simple but comfortable, with whitewashed walls and a braided rug on the floor. Her ruined dress was gone, replaced by a clean one hanging on a peg by the door. It was simple calico in a blue print, and it looked about her size. There was a gentle knock on the door. "Sara, are you awake?" It was Martha's voice. "Yes, madam." Martha entered carrying a tray with a plate of food and a cup of coffee. "I thought you might want to eat before you try to get up. How are you feeling?" "Sore, but better than yesterday." "I imagine so." Martha set the tray across Sara's lap. There were scrambled eggs, bacon, biscuits with butter and jam, and sliced apples. It was more food than Sara had seen in weeks. "Eat slowly," Martha cautioned. Echoing Lucas's words from the day before, Sara obeyed, savoring each bite. The food was simple but perfectly cooked, and she felt strength flowing back into her body with each mouthful. "The men are out working," Martha said, settling into a chair by the window. "Tom owns this ranch. We raise horses mostly, some cattle. Lucas has worked here for about 5 years now. He is a good man, steady and reliable." Sara heard something in Martha's tone, a kind of gentle probing. "He saved my life yesterday. He has a good heart, though he does not let many people see it." Martha folded her hands in her lap. "He came to us in rough shape. Never said exactly what happened before, but he was running from something or someone. Tom gave him a chance, and he has been here ever since." Sara took a sip of the coffee, letting the warmth spread through her. "You said you might need help in the house." Martha's face brightened. "I did say that to Tom just last week, as a matter of fact. Our last girl, Anne, got married and moved away. I have been managing on my own, but with the men to cook for and the house to keep and the garden to tend, it does get to be a lot." "I can cook and clean," Sara said. "My mother taught me before she died. I took care of the house for my father after that." "Then perhaps we can come to an arrangement," Martha said. "Room and board plus a small wage. Nothing fancy, but honest work." Relief flooded through Sara so intensely that she felt dizzy. "I would be grateful for the opportunity." "Good. That is settled then." Martha stood. "When you are finished eating, get dressed and come to the kitchen. I will show you around." She left Sara to finish her breakfast in peace. Sara ate everything on the plate, then carefully got out of bed. Her legs were steadier than they had been, though still weak. She washed her face in the basin of water Martha had left and dressed in the blue calico dress. It fit well enough, perhaps a bit loose in the waist, but nothing that could not be fixed with a belt. When she made her way to the kitchen, she found Martha kneading bread dough at a large wooden table. The kitchen was spacious and well equipped, with a large cast iron stove, a pump for water at the sink, and shelves lined with jars of preserved food. "Good," Martha said when she saw Sara. "You have some color back in your face, not so much like a ghost now." Sara smiled tentatively. "Thank you for the dress." It was Anne's. She left several behind when she married, said she wanted all new things to start her new life. Martha shaped the dough into loaves and placed them in greased pans. "You are about the same size, so they should do until we can make you some more." "I do not have money to pay you back." "Did I ask for money?" Martha's tone was gentle but firm. "You will earn your keep with work." "That is payment enough." For the rest of the morning, Martha showed Sara around the house and explained the daily routine. There was bread to bake, meals to prepare for the 4 men who worked on the ranch, laundry to wash, floors to sweep, and a garden to tend. It was hard work, but Sara had never been afraid of hard work. They were in the garden, Martha explaining which plants needed water and which needed weeding when the men returned for the midday meal. Tom came first, stomping dust from his boots on the porch. He was followed by 2 younger men Martha introduced as Jack and Henry, ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse. And finally, Lucas appeared, leading his horse toward the barn. Sara felt her heartbeat quicken when she saw him. In the daylight, she could see him more clearly. He was tall and lean, with broad shoulders and a horseman's grace. When he glanced toward the house and saw her standing in the garden, he touched the brim of his hat in greeting. "Lucas found you then," Martha said, following Sara's gaze. "I told you he was a good man." They went inside to prepare the meal, and soon the men were gathered around the large table in the dining room. Sara helped Martha serve the food, feeling self-conscious under the curious gazes of the ranch hands. "Boys, this is Sara," Tom announced. "She will be helping Martha around the house." "Pleased to meet you, madam," Jack said. He was young, probably no more than 20, with red hair and freckles. Henry, who looked to be in his 30s, nodded politely but said nothing. Lucas met Sara's eyes across the table. "Glad to see you looking better." "Thanks to you," Sara replied quietly. The meal was filled with the men's conversation about horses, mending fences, and a troublesome coyote that had been spotted near the chicken coop. Sara and Martha ate in the kitchen, which seemed to be the custom, and then cleaned up while the men returned to their work. The afternoon passed quickly. Sara's body protested the activity after her ordeal, but she pushed through, determined to prove her worth. By the time evening fell and supper was prepared, she was exhausted but satisfied with the day's work. That evening, after the men had eaten and dispersed to their various quarters, Sara sat on the back porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The air was finally cooling, a blessed relief after the heat of the day. She heard footsteps and turned to see Lucas approaching. He had his hat in his hand, his dark hair slightly damp as if he had just washed. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Please." He sat down on the porch steps, not too close but not distant either. For a while they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. "Tom says you are staying on," Lucas finally said. "Yes, Martha offered me work." "Good, I am glad." He turned his head to look at her. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Tired, but better." Sara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "I wanted to thank you properly. For yesterday, if you had not come along when you did, I would have died at that well." Lucas shook his head. "You would have found the strength somehow. You walked 60 miles to get there. That is not someone who gives up easily." "I was ready to give up," Sara admitted. "I had nothing left to give. But you are still here." "Because you gave me water and brought me to safety." Sara met his eyes. "Why did you do that?" "You said someone helped you once, but there must be more to it than that." Lucas was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "I told you I came here 5 years ago in rough shape. What I did not say was that I was running from a murder charge. Sara felt her breath catch, but she did not pull away. I did not do it, Lucas continued, but I was blamed for it. My brother and I had a ranch in Texas near Fort Worth. A small spread, but it was ours. A man named Calhoun wanted our land. He made offers we refused, and he decided to take it anyway. He ambushed my brother while he was out checking the fences, killed him. Lucas's voice was flat, controlled. I found Calhoun's knife at the scene, went to town to report it to the sheriff, but Calhoun got there first. Spun a story about how I was the one who killed my brother. I had no proof otherwise. What did you do? I ran. Figured I would hang if I stayed, guilty or not. Rode west and did not stop until I reached New Mexico. Ended up here, half dead from exhaustion and grief. Tom found me passed out in his barn one morning. Could have shot me for a trespasser, but he gave me water instead. Lucas smiled faintly. Gave me work and a reason to keep living. So when I saw you at that well, I thought maybe that was my chance to do the same for someone else. Sara absorbed this information, turning it over in her mind. She should have been frightened, learning that the man who saved her was running from the law. But something in his story rang true, and her instincts told her he was not lying. "You regret running?" she asked. "Every day." "But I regret not being there to save my brother more." "What was his name, Matthew?" Lucas's voice softened. "He was 2 years older than me, always looked out for me growing up, and I could not even give him justice." Without thinking, Sara reached out and placed her hand over his. Lucas looked down at their joined hands in surprise, then up at her face. "You gave me more than just water yesterday," Sara said quietly. "You gave me hope when I had none left. Maybe that is a kind of justice. Not the kind your brother deserved, but justice nonetheless." Something shifted in Lucas's expression, a crack in the armor he wore. He turned his hand over so that his palm pressed against hers, his fingers curling around hers. "Maybe," he said. They sat like that for a while, hands clasped, watching the stars. Sara felt something stirring in her chest, something she had thought dead and buried with her old life. It was fragile and new, but it was there. Eventually, Lucas released her hand and stood. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." "You too." He nodded and replaced his hat. "Good night, Sara." "Good night, Lucas." She watched him walk toward the bunkhouse, his figure outlined in the moonlight. Then she went inside to the small room that was now hers and lay down on the comfortable bed, her hand still warm from his touch. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Sara woke before dawn to help Martha prepare breakfast for the men. After they ate and left for their work, there was the kitchen to clean, bread to bake, laundry to wash, and a dozen other tasks that filled the hours until midday dinner. Afternoons brought more work, and then supper to prepare, dishes to wash, and finally a few moments of rest before bed. It was hard work, but Sara found satisfaction in it. Her body grew stronger, the sunburn faded, and she began to put on weight from Martha's good cooking. More than that, she felt useful. She felt like she had a purpose again. Lucas was often nearby, though he never shirked his duties to spend time with her. But Sara noticed that he always seemed to find reasons to stop by the house during the day. He would need water from the kitchen, or he would deliver fresh eggs from the chicken coop, or he would offer to carry something heavy for Martha. And each time his eyes would find Sara, and they would exchange a few words, sometimes a smile. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after Sara's arrival, a wheel on the wagon broke. Tom and the other men were out on the range checking on the cattle, and Lucas was in the barn repairing tack. Sara had just finished hanging laundry when she heard Martha call out in frustration. "Of all the times for this to happen," the older woman said, staring at the wagon. One of the wheels had developed a crack, and it was clear it needed to be replaced. I needed to go into town tomorrow for supplies. Can it be fixed? Sara asked. Tom can fix it, but he will not be back until evening and it will take him most of tomorrow to do the repair. Martha shook her head. I suppose the trip will have to wait. Lucas emerged from the barn, drawn by their voices. What is wrong? Martha explained the situation and Lucas crouched down to examine the wheel. I can fix this, he said after a moment. It will take a few hours, but I can have it ready by tonight. You have your own work to do, Martha protested. I am caught up, and it is better to fix it now than wait. He looked up at Sara. Could you help me? I will need someone to hold things steady while I work. Of course, Sara said, ignoring the flutter in her chest at the prospect of spending the afternoon with him. Martha looked between them, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Well, if you are sure you have the time, Lucas, I would certainly appreciate it. They worked together in the shade of the barn, Lucas explaining what he was doing as he removed the damaged wheel and prepared the replacement Tom kept in storage. Sara held tools, steadied pieces of wood, and wiped sweat from her brow as the afternoon heat built. You are good at this, she observed, watching him work with sure, skilled hands. I learned from my father. He was a wheelwright before he turned to ranching. Lucas fitted a new spoke into place. Matthew and I both learned the trade, figured it was good to have skills beyond just riding and roping. Do you have other family? Besides your brother, I mean. Not anymore. My parents died of cholera when I was 15. Matthew was 17. We managed on our own until Calhoun decided he wanted what was ours. Lucas's jaw tightened. What about you? Any family left? None. My mother died 4 years ago. I was an only child. Sara handed him the tool he needed before he asked for it. It was just my father and me, and now he is gone too. So we are both alone. Yes. Lucas glanced at her, his blue eyes intense. Or maybe we are not as alone as we think. Sara felt heat that had nothing to do with the sun rise in her cheeks. She looked away, focusing on the task at hand, but she could feel Lucas's gaze lingering on her. They continued working, the conversation flowing more easily as the afternoon wore on. Lucas told her about growing up in Texas, about learning to break horses, and the time he was thrown into a water trough by a particularly ornery stallion. Sara found herself laughing, the sound strange and rusty from disuse. She told him about Silver City, about the good years before her father's demons caught up with him. She told him about her mother's flower garden and how she had tried to keep it alive after her death, only to watch it wither and die along with everything else. Would you plant another garden if you could? Lucas asked, tightening the final bolt on the repaired wheel. Maybe. If I had a place that was mine. Tom and Martha have been talking about expanding the vegetable garden. Maybe you could plant some flowers on one side. I bet Martha would like that. Sara considered this. I would like that too. They tested the wheel and it held firm. Lucas declared it ready for use and they stood back to admire their work. His shirt was damp with sweat and there was a smudge of grease on his cheek. Without thinking, Sara reached up to wipe it away with the corner of her apron. Lucas went very still at her touch, his eyes locked on hers. Sara's hand lingered a moment longer than necessary, her fingers brushing against his sun-warmed skin. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something Sara had never felt before. Sara, Lucas said softly, her name a question and a statement all at once. But before either of them could say more, they heard Tom's voice calling from across the yard. The moment broke and Sara stepped back, her heart pounding. Tom rode up with Jack and Henry, all 3 men dusty and tired. How did things go today? Tom asked. We fixed the wagon wheel, Lucas replied, his voice steady despite what had just passed between them. Should be good for the trip to town tomorrow. Excellent work. Tom dismounted and examined the repair. This will do nicely. Thank you, Lucas. That evening, Sara found it hard to concentrate on her tasks. She burned the biscuits, something she had not done in years, and nearly dropped a plate while washing dishes. Martha noticed, of course, but said nothing beyond a knowing look. When Sara finally escaped to the back porch after supper, hoping for a moment of peace to sort through her tangled thoughts, she found Lucas already there. He had clearly been waiting for her. "I hope I did not overstep this afternoon," he said without preamble. "If I made you uncomfortable, I apologize." "You did not," Sara said quickly. "You did nothing wrong." "Then why did you run away after Tom arrived?" Sara sat down on the porch steps, and after a moment Lucas joined her. "I did not run away, I just needed a moment to think." "About what?" She turned to look at him, this man who had saved her life and shown her kindness when she needed it most. "About how I feel about you." Lucas's expression was unreadable in the dim light. "And what do you feel?" Sara took a deep breath. "Confused, grateful, safe. And something else I cannot quite name." "I know what you mean." Lucas's voice was low. "I feel it too. Have been feeling it since the day I found you at that well. We have only known each other for 2 weeks. I know, but sometimes 2 weeks is enough to know something is worth exploring." Sara's heart was racing now. "Lucas, you know my history. You know what happened to my father, the shame attached to my name. I have nothing to offer anyone. You think I care about that?" Lucas's hand found hers in the darkness. "Sara, I am a wanted man in Texas. My name is worth less than dirt if anyone ever connected Lucas Cooper to Luke Chambers. We are both starting over with nothing but what we can build from here. Maybe that makes us perfect for each other. Or maybe it makes us both foolish for even considering this. Maybe." Lucas smiled. "But I have been alone for 5 years, and in 2 weeks, you have made me feel more alive than I have felt since before Matthew died. If that is foolishness, I will gladly embrace it." Sara felt tears prick her eyes. "I watched my father destroy himself and everything around him. I swore I would never let anyone get close enough to hurt me that way. I am not your father, and you are not responsible for his choices." Lucas's grip on her hand tightened. "I will not pretend I can promise you a life without hardship. We are in the middle of New Mexico with nothing but our labor to trade for our keep. But I can promise that I will never betray your trust, and I will spend every day trying to be worthy of whatever you choose to give me." Sara looked at their joined hands, then up at Lucas's face. In his eyes, she saw the same loneliness she had felt, the same desperate need to belong somewhere to someone. And beneath that, she saw hope. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "I have never been courted. I have never allowed myself to think about that kind of future." "Neither have I, not for a long time." Lucas brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "But maybe we can figure it out together." Sara felt something in her chest crack open, a wall she had built brick by brick after her mother's death. It hurt, but it was a good hurt, like the ache of muscles after honest work. "All right," she said. "We can try." Lucas's smile was brighter than the stars overhead. "That is all I am asking." They sat together until late, talking in quiet voices about everything and nothing. When Sara finally went to bed that night, she lay awake for a long time, her hand still warm from Lucas's kiss, hope blooming in her heart like flowers in her mother's long-lost garden. The weeks that followed were the happiest Sara had known in years. She and Lucas were careful to be discreet, not wanting to upset the balance of the household, but everyone knew something had changed between them. Tom and Martha approved, their smiles warm whenever they saw Sara and Lucas together. Lucas began to take his meals in the kitchen with Sara and Martha, sitting at the small table while they cooked, helping to peel potatoes or snap beans. He made excuses to linger after supper, helping Sara with the dishes or walking her to the garden to check on the flowers she had planted. One Sunday, when the ranch work was lighter, Lucas saddled his horse and a gentle mare Tom suggested they use and took Sara riding. They rode out to a place Lucas knew, a small canyon where a spring created a pool of clear water surrounded by cottonwood trees. "I come here sometimes when I need to think," Lucas said, helping Sara dismount. "It is the most peaceful place I know." They sat by the water's edge, their feet dangling in the cool spring. Sara had never felt so content, so perfectly at ease. Lucas's arm was around her shoulders and she leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Sara," Lucas said after a while, "I need to tell you something." She heard the seriousness in his tone and sat up to look at him. "What is it?" "I have been thinking about the future. About what I want." He took a breath. "I want to have my own place again someday, not a big ranch like Tom's, but something. A few acres, some horses, maybe some cattle, a house, a real home." "That sounds wonderful." "I have been saving my wages. I do not spend much, so most of what Tom pays me goes into a tin in my trunk." Lucas turned to face her fully. "In another year, maybe two, I will have enough for a down payment on some land. There is a piece for sale about 10 miles from here, near Oro Grande. It is not much, but it has good water and grazing." Sara's heart began to pound. "Lucas, what are you saying?" "I am saying that when I think about that future, about that house on that land, I cannot picture it without you in it." His hands cupped her face gently. "I am saying that I love you, Sara Harper. I have loved you since the moment you looked up at me from that well with such determination to survive. And if you will have me, I want to spend the rest of my life giving you reasons to keep living." Sara felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "Lucas, I love you too. I did not think I was capable of loving anyone, but you proved me wrong." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, his lips gentle against hers. It was Sara's first kiss, and it felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "So is that a yes? To what exactly? To marrying me? Eventually, I mean, when I can afford to give you a proper home." Sara laughed through her tears. "Yes, yes, I will marry you, Lucas Cooper." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Sara felt the last of her walls crumble to dust. She had come to New Mexico expecting to die. Instead, she had found life. The ride back to the ranch was filled with stolen kisses and quiet laughter. When they arrived, Tom and Martha were sitting on the porch, and one look at their faces told the older couple everything they needed to know. "Congratulations," Martha said, coming down to embrace Sara. "It is about time." "You knew?" Sara asked, surprised. "Dear girl, we have known since that first evening when you sat on the porch together holding hands." Martha's eyes twinkled. "You are not nearly as subtle as you thought." Tom clapped Lucas on the shoulder. "You are a good man, Lucas. You will make her happy." "I will certainly try, sir." That evening, after supper, Tom pulled Lucas aside for a private conversation. Sara cleaned the kitchen with Martha, trying not to worry about what was being discussed. "Tom is not going to forbid us, is he?" Sara asked. "Gracious, no. If anything, he is probably offering to help." Martha handed Sara a plate to dry. "Tom has a soft heart beneath that gruff exterior. He will want to see you both settled and happy." When Lucas returned to the kitchen, his expression was dazed. "Tom offered to loan me the money for the land. Said I could pay him back over time and we could start building right away." Sara nearly dropped the plate she was holding. "What?" "He said he has been thinking about expanding the ranch's horse breeding operation, and he wants a foreman to oversee it. Offered me the job with a salary increase." Lucas ran his hand through his hair. "He said I could build a house on the land and we could use part of it for ranch business and part for ourselves." "Lucas, that is incredible." There is more. He said if I married you, he would consider it an investment in both our futures. Said he and Martha have come to think of us as family. Sara looked at Martha, who was smiling broadly. Is this true? Every word. Tom and I never had children of our own, but if we had, we would have wanted them to be like you too. Martha wiped her eyes with her apron. You have both been through so much. You deserve happiness. 2 months later, on a bright October morning in 1882, Sara Harper married Lucas Cooper in a small ceremony at the ranch. The local minister from Oro Grande performed the service, with Tom and Martha standing as witnesses. Jack and Henry attended, along with a few of the neighboring ranchers and their families. Sara wore a dress Martha had made for her, pale blue with white lace at the collar and cuffs. Lucas wore his best shirt and a new vest Tom had given him as a wedding gift. When they exchanged vows, Sara's voice was steady and sure, all traces of the broken girl who had collapsed at the well gone. After the ceremony, Martha had prepared a feast. There was roasted beef, potatoes, fresh bread, pies, and a cake with white frosting. They ate and celebrated, and when the sun began to set, Tom presented Lucas with the deed to the land near Oro Grande. It is yours, Tom said, paid in full. Consider it our wedding gift. Lucas looked stunned. Tom, I cannot accept this. It is too much. You can and you will. You have earned it with 5 years of loyal service. Tom's voice was gruff with emotion. Besides, you will be working off the value managing my breeding operation. This just gives you a head start. Sara saw tears in Lucas's eyes as he shook Tom's hand. I will not let you down, sir. I know you will not. Martha embraced Sara. You are both family now. This is what families do for each other. That night, Sara and Lucas stayed in a small cabin on the edge of Tom's property, a place that would serve as their temporary home while they built their house on the new land. It was simple, just one room with a bed, a table, and a stove, but it was theirs. Lucas lit the lantern and turned to find Sara standing by the window, looking out at the moonlit landscape. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? He asked softly. How different my life is from what I imagined it would be 3 months ago. Sara leaned back against him. I thought I was going to die at that well. I wanted to die. And now, she turned in his arms to face him. Now I cannot imagine wanting anything but to live with you and build a life together. Lucas kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I will spend every day of that life making sure you never regret saying yes to me. I could never regret it. They made love for the first time that night, awkward and tender and sweet. Afterward they lay tangled together, skin against skin, listening to the sounds of the night outside. Lucas, Sara whispered into the darkness. Yes, tell me about the house we are going to build. She felt him smile against her hair. It will have a kitchen with a big window so you can see the sunrise while you cook. A parlor with a fireplace for cold winter nights. A bedroom for us, and maybe a couple more for children someday if we are blessed. And a porch where we can sit together and watch the stars like we did that first evening. It sounds perfect. It will be, because you will be there. Sara closed her eyes, peace settling over her like a blanket. For the first time in years, she looked forward to tomorrow. The following months were filled with hard work and joy. Lucas and Tom hired a crew from Oro Grande to help build the house. Sara continued working at the main ranch house during the day, but every evening, she and Lucas rode out to their land to watch the progress. The house took shape slowly. First the foundation, then the frame, then the walls and roof. By December, the basic structure was complete, and by February of 1883, they were able to move in. It was not entirely finished. The floor still needed some work, and there were finishing touches to complete. but it had a roof and walls and a working stove. Martha helped Sara make curtains for the windows and a quilt for their bed. Tom gave them a table and chairs he had built years ago but never used. Jack and Henry contributed dishes and pots and pans. It was not much, but it was home. On the first night in their new house, Sara stood in the middle of the main room and turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. The kitchen window that looked east, just as Lucas had promised. The stone fireplace in the parlor. The bedroom where their bed waited with its new quilt. "What do you think?" Lucas asked, coming up behind her. "I think it is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." He laughed and swept her up in his arms, carrying her toward the bedroom. "Wait until you see it in the morning light." Sara wrapped her arms around his neck. "I love you, Lucas Cooper." "I love you too, Sara Cooper." The name still sounded strange and wonderful to her ears. She was not Sara Harper anymore, that broken girl with nothing to her name. She was Sara Cooper, wife of Lucas Cooper, owner of a home and a piece of land and a future filled with possibility. Life settled into a new rhythm. Lucas worked long days managing the horse breeding operation, often rising before dawn and not returning until after dark. Sara tended their home, planted a vegetable garden and the flower garden she had dreamed of, and occasionally helped Martha at the main ranch house when extra hands were needed. In the spring, Sara discovered she was pregnant. She told Lucas one evening after supper, watching his face carefully as the news sank in. "A baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We are having a baby. Yes, Martha thinks it will come in October." Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Sara, this is the best news I have ever received. You are happy." Happy does not begin to cover it. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining. "We are going to be a family." Sara felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. "We already are a family." A bigger family, then. Lucas was attentive throughout the pregnancy, almost to the point of being overprotective. He insisted Sara not work too hard, that she rest more, that she eat enough. Sara found his concern endearing, even when it was excessive. Martha was a steady source of advice and reassurance, having assisted with many births over the years. As Sara's belly grew and the baby's movements became stronger, Martha assured her that everything was progressing normally. "You are healthy and strong," Martha said one afternoon as they sat shelling peas together. "You will do just fine when the time comes." "I hope so. I am a little frightened, if I am honest." "Every woman is frightened before her first baby, but you have Lucas and Tom and me. You will not be alone." Sara squeezed Martha's hand gratefully. The older woman had become the mother she lost, and Sara could not imagine facing this without her. In late October, on a cool evening when the leaves were turning gold and red, Sara's labor began. Lucas rode for Martha and the midwife from town, while Sara paced the house, breathing through the contractions. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Lucas stayed by Sara's side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering encouragement. When Sara wanted to give up, when the pain became too much and she cried that she could not do it, Lucas held her face in his hands. "Yes, you can," he told her firmly. "You are the strongest person I know. You walked 60 miles alone. You survived when you had every reason to give up. You can do this." Sara drew strength from his words, from his presence, from the love she saw in his eyes. And when the midwife finally placed a squalling, red-faced infant in her arms, Sara looked down at her son and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "He is perfect," she whispered. "He is," Lucas agreed, tears streaming down his face as he touched the baby's tiny hand. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Matthew Thomas Cooper, after Lucas's brother and Tom. When Tom heard the name, the usually stoic rancher broke down and wept. "You do me a great honor," he said, holding the baby with shaking hands. "A great honor indeed." Martha bustled around, making sure Sara was comfortable and the baby was warm and that Lucas remembered to eat. Jack and Henry came by with gifts, a small carved horse and a soft blanket. The neighboring families stopped in to offer congratulations. Sara had never felt so surrounded by love. The months after Matthew's birth were exhausting but joyful. Sara learned to navigate the demands of motherhood, often feeling overwhelmed but never alone. Lucas was a devoted father, rising with Sara for middle-of-the-night feedings, changing diapers without complaint and spending every free moment holding his son. "I never thought I would have this," Lucas said one night, rocking Matthew while Sara tried to eat her supper. "A family of my own. A son." "Neither did I," Sara replied, "but I am so grateful we do." Matthew was 6 months old when Lucas came home one evening with news that made Sara's blood run cold. "There were men in town today asking questions," he said, his voice tight. "They were looking for someone." Described a man who sounds a lot like me. Sara felt fear coil in her stomach. "What did they say exactly?" They asked if anyone had seen a man named Luke Chambers. Said he was wanted for murder in Texas. Lucas ran his hand through his hair. Said there was a reward for information. "Did anyone recognize you?" "I do not think so. I was out at the breeding station all day, but Tom heard about it and came to warn me." Sara pulled Matthew closer, her mind racing. "What do we do?" "I do not know." Lucas paced the small parlor. "I have been Lucas Cooper for 5 years. I have a life here, a family. But if someone connects Luke Chambers to Lucas Cooper, it will all be over. We could leave, go somewhere they would never find us. And go where? How would we live? We have a baby now, Sara. We cannot just run." Lucas stopped pacing and looked at her. "I am tired of running. I have been running for 5 years and I am tired." "Then what do you suggest?" "I think I need to face this, go back to Texas and clear my name." Sara felt panic rising in her chest. "How? You said yourself you had no proof. What has changed?" "Maybe nothing. But maybe in 5 years, someone has come forward. Maybe Calhoun slipped up, or maybe someone else saw something." Lucas knelt in front of Sara and took her hand. "I cannot live the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when someone will figure out who I am. And I will not risk you and Matthew being associated with a wanted man. I do not care about that. But I do." Lucas's voice was firm. "You and Matthew deserve better than to live in fear. You deserve a husband and father whose name is not stained with false accusations." Sara knew he was right, but the thought of him leaving, of something happening to him, was unbearable. "What if you do not come back? What if they hang you before you can prove your innocence? Then you will have this house and the land. Tom will make sure you and Matthew are taken care of." "I do not want the house and land without you in it," Sara said fiercely. "We will figure this out together. If you go back to Texas, then Matthew and I come with you." "Absolutely not. It is too dangerous." "Then it is too dangerous for you too." They argued back and forth, but eventually, Lucas had to concede that Sara was not going to back down. They decided to seek Tom's advice, and the older man listened carefully as Lucas explained the situation. "You are in a tough spot," Tom said when Lucas finished. "But I think you are right that you need to face this. A man cannot build a future on a foundation of lies and fear." "But what can I do? I have no proof of my innocence." "Maybe not, but you have character witnesses. You have lived here for 5 years as an honest, hard-working man. That has to count for something." Tom leaned back in his chair. "I have a friend in Fort Worth, a judge named Harrison. He is a fair man. If we could get your case in front of him instead of the local sheriff, you might have a chance." "How do we do that?" "I send a telegram." Explain the situation and ask him to look into it. If he agrees, you turn yourself into him instead of the local law. It was a risk, but it was better than nothing. They agreed to Tom's plan, and he sent the telegram the next day. 2 weeks later, they received a response. Judge Harrison remembered the case and had always had doubts about the charges against Luke Chambers. He agreed to investigate and invited Lucas to come to Fort Worth under safe conduct. So, in March of 1884, Lucas Cooper, who was really Luke Chambers, prepared to return to Texas. Despite his protests, Sara insisted on accompanying him with Matthew, who was now 5 months old. "We are a family," she said firmly. "We face this together." Martha and Tom watched them leave with heavy hearts. "You come back to us," Martha said, hugging Sara tightly. "All three of you." "We will," Sara promised, praying it was true. The journey to Fort Worth took nearly 2 weeks. They traveled by stagecoach when they could, but some stretches required them to use their own wagon. Matthew was remarkably good-natured through it all, sleeping most of the way and only fussing when he was hungry. Sara watched Lucas closely during the journey. He grew more tense the closer they got to Texas, his jaw tight and his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. She knew he was frightened, though he tried to hide it. "Whatever happens," she told him one night as they camped beside the road, "I want you to know that you gave me more than just water at that well. You gave me life, real life, the kind worth living." Lucas pulled her close. "You gave me the same thing. I was just existing before I found you. You made me want to live again." When they finally reached Fort Worth, Lucas went directly to Judge Harrison's chambers. Sara waited in a nearby hotel with Matthew, pacing the floor and praying as she never had before. Hours passed, each one feeling like an eternity. Sara fed Matthew and changed him and tried to stay calm, but her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Finally, as the sun was setting, there was a knock on the door. Sara opened it to find Lucas standing there, his expression unreadable. "Well?" she asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Lucas stepped inside and closed the door. Then he smiled, a real smile, the kind she had not seen in weeks. The judge found new evidence. A witness came forward 2 years ago and said they saw Calhoun kill Matthew. The witness was Calhoun's own wife, who finally had enough of his violence. Calhoun is in prison serving a life sentence. "All charges against me have been dropped." Sara nearly collapsed with relief. "You are free." "I am free. My name is cleared. I am Lucas Cooper, formerly Luke Chambers, and I am no longer a wanted man." She threw herself into his arms. Matthew squeezed between them, and they held each other tight. Sara felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy this time. "We can go home," Lucas said into her hair. "We can really go home." They stayed in Fort Worth long enough for Lucas to visit his brother's grave and say a proper goodbye. He stood in the cemetery, hat in hand, and told Matthew all about the uncle he would never meet. "I wish you could have known him," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "He would have loved you, and he would have loved your mother." He paused. "I think he would approve of the life I have built. I hope he would be proud." Sara stood beside him, her hand in his. "I think he would be very proud." Before they left Texas, Lucas did one more thing. He rode out to the land that had once been his and Matthew's ranch. Calhoun had lost it when he was convicted, and it had been sold to pay his debts. Lucas looked at the place one last time, remembering the good years with his brother, then turned his horse toward New Mexico. "That life is over," he said to Sara. "My life is with you now, in Oro Grande." They returned to their home in late April to a joyous welcome. Tom and Martha had been beside themselves with worry, and when they saw Lucas, Sara, and Matthew safe and sound, there were more tears and embraces. "I knew you would make it," Tom said, clapping Lucas on the back. I never doubted it for a moment. Life resumed its rhythm, but something had changed. Lucas no longer carried the weight of his past. He stood taller, smiled more easily, and threw himself into his work with renewed vigor. The horse breeding operation flourished under his management, and Tom began to talk about making him a full partner in the business. Sara tended their home and their son, watching Matthew grow from a baby to a toddler to a bright, curious boy. She planted more flowers each spring, until their yard was a riot of color that reminded her of her mother's garden. When Matthew was 3 years old, Sara discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect. In December of 1886, she gave birth to a daughter they named Martha Rose, after the woman who had become like a mother to Sara. Martha the elder was overjoyed. "2 babies named after us old folks," she said, holding the infant with tears in her eyes. "Tom and I are the luckiest people in the world." The years passed in a blur of happiness. Matthew grew into a strong, kind boy who idolized his father and followed him everywhere. Little Martha, whom they called Rose to avoid confusion, was a spirited child with her mother's determination and her father's blue eyes. In 1889, Sara gave birth to another son, whom they named Jack Henry after the 2 ranch hands who had become like brothers to Lucas. Jack and Henry themselves were both married now with families of their own, but they remained on Tom's ranch and close friends. Lucas and Sara's house was expanded to accommodate their growing family. With the additional bedrooms, Lucas had dreamed of that first night. The horse breeding operation had become so successful that Lucas was indeed made a partner, and their financial situation improved considerably. But despite their prosperity, Sara and Lucas never forgot where they came from. They made a point of helping others in need, offering work to drifters and welcoming travelers at their table. When a young woman showed up in Oro Grande with nowhere to go, Sara immediately offered her work and a place to stay, remembering when she had been in the same situation. "Why do you help everyone?" Matthew asked his mother one day. He was 10 years old now and beginning to understand the world better. Sara looked at her son, so like his father with his dark hair and blue eyes. "Because once, when I had nothing and no one, your father gave me water and hope, and Tom and Martha gave me a home and a family. Now we have the ability to give that to others. It would be selfish not to." "Is that why you and Papa are always so happy together?" Sara smiled. "We are happy because we love each other, but also because we both know what it is like to have nothing. We never take what we have for granted." As the children grew, Lucas made sure they knew their family's history. He told them about his brother Matthew and why their oldest son carried his name. He told them about Sara's courage in walking 60 miles alone. He told them about Tom and Martha's generosity and the second chances that had made their family possible. "Always remember," he said, "that who you are is not determined by where you come from or what happens to you. It is determined by what you choose to do with what you have been given." In 1895, Tom passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 73. It was a terrible loss for all of them, but especially for Lucas, who had looked to Tom as a father figure. They buried him on the ranch he had loved, beneath a cottonwood tree, with a simple headstone that read Thomas Wright, husband, friend, father to all who needed one. Martha lived for another 5 years, surrounded by the people she loved. She died in 1900, with Sara holding one hand and Lucas the other. Her last words were, "My children, my beautiful children." They buried her next to Tom, and Sara planted flowers on both graves that bloomed every spring. By the turn of the century, Matthew was 18 and working full-time on the ranch with his father. Rose was 14, beautiful and clever, with dreams of becoming a teacher. Jack Henry, whom everyone called Henry to avoid confusion with the ranch hand, was 11 and obsessed with horses just like his father. Lucas and Sara were now in their late 30s, still deeply in love, still grateful for every day they had together. On summer evenings, they would sit on their porch, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. "Do you ever think about that day at the well?" Lucas asked one such evening. "Sometimes," Sara replied. "It feels like a lifetime ago, like it happened to different people." In a way, it did. We are not the same people we were then. No, we are not. Sara leaned her head on his shoulder. That girl at the well was broken and ready to die. This woman sitting beside you knows what it means to truly live. I am glad I found you that day. I am glad you gave me water and a reason to keep going. Lucas took her hand, his thumb tracing the wedding band she had worn for 17 years. "You know what that reason was?" "What?" "You. The possibility of you. Even before I knew your name or your story, I looked at you and thought, this person matters. This person is worth saving. And I was right." Sara turned to kiss him, her heart as full as it had been on their wedding day. "You were worth saving too. We saved each other." As the sun set over the New Mexico landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Sara reflected on how far they had come. From that desperate day at the well to this moment of peace and contentment, their journey had been long and sometimes difficult. But every struggle had been worth it. In the distance, she could see Matthew and Rose working with the horses, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Henry was nearby, helping Jack with some task in the barn. Their home was filled with love and life, built on a foundation of kindness given when it was needed most. "I love you," Sara said to Lucas. "I love you too," he replied. "Always and forever." They sat together as the stars began to emerge, just as they had that first evening 20 years ago when Lucas had told her his story, and she had begun to believe in second chances. The world had changed around them, the old century giving way to the new, but their love remained constant. Matthew married in 1902, bringing home a sweet-natured girl named Emily from Oro Grande. They built a house on the property and welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Sara, in 1903. Rose married a young teacher in 1904 and moved to Santa Fe, though she visited often. Henry showed no signs of wanting to settle down, perfectly content working with the horses and living the bachelor life. Lucas and Sara became grandparents, then grandparents again as Matthew and Emily had 2 more children. The property that had once been just theirs expanded into a true family compound, with multiple houses and a thriving business. On the 20th anniversary of their meeting at the well, Lucas surprised Sara with a gift. He led her outside to where a beautiful structure stood near the house, a replica of the well where they had first met. It was decorative, surrounded by Sara's flowers with a plaque that read "Where Our Story Began, August 1882. Sara stood looking at it, tears streaming down her face. "Lucas, it is perfect. I wanted us to always remember," he said, pulling her close. "I wanted our children and grandchildren to know that sometimes the worst moments in life lead to the best. You were dying at a well and I was slowly dying inside. We saved each other." "We did," Sara agreed. "And we built something beautiful from those ashes." They stood there together, surrounded by the family and home they had created, and Sara thought about destiny and providence and the strange twists of fate that bring people together. If her father had not gambled everything away, if she had not walked 60 miles in the desert heat, if Lucas had ridden down a different road that day, none of this would exist. But all of those things had happened, and here they were, blessed beyond measure. As the years continued to pass, Lucas and Sara aged gracefully together. His dark hair turned silver, and lines deepened around her eyes, but they still looked at each other with the same love they had felt as young people. They still held hands while walking. They still kissed goodnight every evening. They watched their children and grandchildren grow, offering wisdom when asked and love always. They saw the business continue to thrive, the ranch expanding under Matthew's capable management. They witnessed the world change around them as the 20th century brought automobiles and telephones, and a pace of life that sometimes felt overwhelming. But through it all, their love remained the constant, the foundation upon which everything else was built. In the spring of 1920, Lucas fell ill. It started as a cough that would not go away, and within weeks, he was confined to bed. The doctor said it was pneumonia, and at 60 years old, Lucas did not have the strength to fight it off. Sara barely left his side, holding his hand and talking to him even when he was too weak to respond. Their children gathered, bringing the grandchildren to say goodbye. Matthew, now 37 and the image of his father, tried to be strong for his mother but broke down crying at his father's bedside. "You taught me everything," Matthew said, gripping his father's hand. "How to be a man, how to love my family, how to treat people with dignity and kindness." "I will never forget." Lucas managed a weak smile. "You make me proud, son. You always have." Rose came from Santa Fe with her 3 children. Henry, still unmarried at 31, sat by the bed with tears streaming down his face. Little Sara, now 17 and the eldest grandchild, held her grandmother's hand and prayed. But Sara knew the end was coming. She could see it in Lucas's eyes, in the way his breathing grew shallower. On a cool evening in April, with the spring flowers blooming all around the house, she sent the children away and lay down beside her husband on the bed they had shared for 38 years. "I am here," she whispered. "I am right here." Lucas's eyes opened, finding hers. "My Sara. My beautiful Sara." "Yes, my love, I am here. I want you to know," he said, each word an effort, "that every single day with you has been a gift. You made my life worth living. You did the same for me, remember? You gave me water and hope when I had neither. And you gave me love, a family, a purpose." Lucas's hand tightened on hers. "I am not afraid to die. I have had a good life, better than I deserved." "Do not say that. You deserved every bit of happiness we found together." "Then I was lucky." He smiled faintly. "Tell the children I love them. Tell them to take care of each other and to remember what is important." "I will, I promise. And Sara, do not mourn me too long. You still have life to live. Live it for both of us." Sara felt tears streaming down her face. "How can I live without you?" "The same way I would have to live without you, by remembering the love and being grateful for the time we had." Lucas's eyes were growing heavy. "I will see you again someday. Wait for me by that well." "I will wait for you," Sara promised. "I love you, Lucas Cooper. I love you so much." "I love you too," he whispered. "Always and forever." His eyes closed and his breathing grew quieter. Sara held him as the sun set, painting the sky in the same colors it had been that first evening they sat on the porch together. And as the stars emerged one by one, Lucas took his final breath, his hand still holding hers. Sara did not cry out or wail. She simply held her husband, feeling the warmth gradually leave his body, and said goodbye to the man who had saved her life, and then made it worth living. The funeral was held on a perfect spring day, with hundreds of people coming to pay their respects. Lucas had touched so many lives during his 60 years, offering work to those who needed it, showing kindness to strangers, building a legacy of generosity and love. They buried him on the ranch, not far from where Tom and Martha rested, beneath a cottonwood tree with a view of the land he had loved. The headstone read, "Lucas Cooper, beloved husband, father, grandfather. He gave water to the thirsty and hope to the hopeless. Sara stood at the grave surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and she told herself to be strong. Lucas would want her to be strong. But late at night, alone in the bed that felt enormous without him, she allowed herself to grieve. The weeks and months after Lucas's death were the hardest of Sara's life. Everything reminded her of him. The porch where they sat together, the kitchen where he had helped her prepare meals, the decorative well with its plaque. She found herself talking to him as if he were still there, telling him about her day, asking his opinion on decisions she had to make. Matthew wanted her to move in with him and Emily, but Sara refused. This was her home, the place she and Lucas had built together. She would not leave it. Slowly, painfully, she adjusted to life alone. She found solace in her grandchildren, in tending her gardens, in helping Emily with the household tasks. Rose visited more frequently, and Henry made a point of stopping by every evening to check on her. Sara lived for another 12 years, long enough to see her great-grandchildren born, long enough to witness the world transform yet again. She remained sharp and active until the very end, her mind full of memories and her heart full of love. In October of 1932, at the age of 68, Sara Harper Cooper passed away peacefully in her sleep. She died in the house Lucas had built for her 50 years earlier, surrounded by pictures of her family and the quilts Martha had made. Her children found her in the morning, lying in bed with a smile on her face. On the nightstand was a letter she had written the night before, addressed to all of them. Matthew read it aloud at her funeral, his voice breaking with emotion. "My dearest children and grandchildren, by the time you read this, I will have gone to join your father and grandfather in whatever comes next. Do not be sad for me. I have lived a long, beautiful life filled with more love than one person has any right to expect. I want you to remember that your father found me at my lowest point, ready to give up on life entirely. He gave me water and hope when I had neither. He showed me that even in our darkest moments, there is always a reason to keep living. That reason is love. Love for each other. Love for the life we have been given. Love for the future we can build together. Never take each other for granted. Never forget the importance of kindness, especially to strangers who may be at their breaking point. Your father and I built this family on the foundation of second chances and compassion. Continue that legacy. I am not afraid of death. I know I will see your father again, waiting for me by that well, ready to give me water one more time. Until then, take care of each other. Love each other. And remember that every ending is also a beginning. All my love, always and forever, your mother and grandmother." They buried Sara next to Lucas, their headstones side by side, overlooking the land they had cultivated and the family they had raised. The decorative well remained, a monument to where their story began, surrounded by flowers that bloomed every spring. Their children and grandchildren continued the legacy Lucas and Sara had built. The ranch prospered for generations, always managed by someone who remembered the values of hard work, kindness, and compassion that had been the foundation of it all. And every year, on the anniversary of the day Lucas found Sara at that well, the family gathered at the decorative memorial. They told the story to the youngest generation, making sure no one forgot how it all began. How a lonely cowboy gave a dying woman water and hope. How they built a life together from nothing but determination and love. How one moment of kindness at a well in the New Mexico desert had created a legacy that would last forever. The story of Sara and Lucas became legend in Oro Grande, passed down through the years as an example of what was possible when people chose love over fear, hope over despair, and kindness over indifference. Their love story was not the stuff of fairy tales, with princes and castles and magic spells. It was better than that. It was real. It was a love forged in desperation and refined by years of hard work and mutual respect. It was a love that saved two broken people and made them whole. It was a love that created life and beauty from ashes and dust. And it all began with a simple act of mercy. A cowboy giving water to a woman collapsed at a well, and in doing so, giving her a reason to keep living.